Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Calen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast. How are you doing, Sam?
Oh, Calen, you know how I'm doing. I'm doing just grand. Thanks.
How are you
doing?
I'm doing good. I think, it's crazy time in the world right now. So you start with 2020 and you go to 2021, and you're like, oh, okay, now we got atmospheric rivers, and now 2022, we've got nuclear apocalypse. So I think, 2023, the aliens will actually land. I'm expecting.
Well, I think that would be a break from the bad news, and wouldn't it?
Why? It'd be something new. It'd be something different.
Unless they're going to suck all our brains out, I welcome the invasion. Come on.
Yeah, I don't think they'd suck our brains out.
No, they want to survive.
They've seen evidence of what our brains do. And
there's no nutrients in there.
No. There's nothing worth taking. So thank God we're safe.
It's true though, right? I mean, the Bread and Butter Collective started out of crises, and it's never really known a moment without at this point.
No.
And I think we could have started. I mean, that's something to say for sure. But when you think about it more, I think we could have started this group anytime in the past, and we would have still been able to say the same thing. I mean, there's always a crisis. There's always something wrong in the world. And I think that maybe our perspective has to change. And over the last 2.5 years now of feeling like being berated with bad news and atmospheric rivers to nuclear apocalypse to pestilence around the world. I mean, I think for myself, I've grown more optimistic, I think, this last half a year, and come to a decision that, this is just how life is. And don't we have to just move forward and enjoy it all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I know the thing that's made it better for me is the collaboration that our hospitality community has come together in, and the Bread and Butter Collective obviously means more to me, and I think you too, Sam, just with that whole social and support network that we get from that. We got to talk about some issues, and speaking of the industry in general, the hospitality industry, previous to this, the hospitality industry is always in constant crisis because their margins traditionally were so low. So everybody was always just hanging on by the seat of their pants. And, a lot of the passionate people that are in the industry, they don't come with a bunch of money as well. So it's not like we're well heeled and, sitting on buckets of money and we're just like, oh, wow, let's do a restaurant for fun. It's really about pursuing our passions, and what better way to do that than collaborate with other restaurateurs that share the same mission. It's I would imagine, I hear this analogy about war times and being in the trenches with people, that build these bonds and connections, and just a deep level of understanding of kind of what we've gone through. And it's kind of funny to be talking about what we've gone through in the world, and when there's people in the world. And I mean, I think there's people in the world always that are facing persecution and very disruptive lives. Never more so now, especially on the heels of the Syrian conflict, Afghanistan, and seeing what's going on in Ukraine. I think, the Ukrainian conflict brings home that it can actually happen to a Western, primarily Caucasian-based population. And I mean, I think it's sad. It's a sad testament that it takes, and I'm trying to, bringing race into this discussion a bit, but I think it's the elephant in the room of just the reaction to that crisis versus pretty much the same thing that happened in Syria, with Aleppo being completely decimated, and refugees pouring out of a country, and that's happening in Ukraine. And obviously, it's probably a little bit different, primarily because Assad in Syria is not a relevant threat to us, but where Putin is,
Mhm.
has the ability to start World War III if it hasn't already started. Um,
Yeah, people keep saying World War III, and I'm not convinced that we already haven't been through it in some form or another. Just with the conflict of information and
yes, information warfare
uh,
for sure.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think, and the internet, it just feels like it's easier to get into what classically could be called a world war without having to go nuclear, ballistic, or even
Hmm.
entering other people's country or borders. I mean,
Hmm.
I think we're in a different time, and there's actual conflict and people being persecuted all over the world, and that hasn't stopped
Hmm.
ever.
No, and
Um,
there's still other countries that are being subjected to the same things they were subjected to prior to this conflict erupting. Um,
that's right.
and it's, yeah, I mean, without, it's hard. I mean, this is where the thing that, I think, the mental health of everybody is key to remembering, but trying to live in the moment and not, that's one thing that I do periodically, is I just remind myself that you don't have control of any of those outcomes, and you don't even have really influence on it. So, kind of working yourself into a tizzy about it. It's much to do with, even in business, when you get really upset about certain circumstances, or you're afraid of outcomes, you just have to focus on what you can control in your environment. And I think it's a good lesson for me. I think it's a good lesson for others to just really try to live in the moment and focus on what they're dealing with in their community. And remember that we're all innately kind. This idea that humans are mean and nasty, is there potential of that? Yes, but that's not human nature. And we do our best when we're sharing stories with each other and breaking bread, and having good wine and having good respectful conversation. And I think that is kind of what I'm trying to focus on now. And just let all the big stuff that I can't control just go by the wayside. And there's one book that I would recommend, and I think I've talked about it on our podcast before, is The Fourth Turning.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and it's so never been more relevant than right now. And 80 years ago, obviously, we're in the middle of World War II. Had another, dictator that was, massacring millions of people. And, the fourth turning, basically, this is the state of humankind, that we evolved through these cycles that last, um, roughly, the entire four turnings are 80 years, and they're blocked into 20-year increments, more or less.
Mhm.
And at the end of it, which is the encouraging part of the story, is we're at the end of the fourth turning, which unleashes a new beginning. And obviously, it's signified by pretty cataclysmic events, similarly to when it ended 80 years ago, which was with the end of World War II,
Mhm.
but brought on 40 years, 50 years of extreme prosperity. So I'm going to go with that book, and
Have you
have fun with
seen
it.
the new book by Dadalio? I think that's the
Yes.
pronounced name, and I just watched a clip on YouTube about his new book, and it really reminded me of The Fourth Turning.
Yeah.
Just because he's talking about the cycles and the overlap of the cycles. And when you condense all the information and streamline it, you can really see the patterns emerging of the world orders. And it's really economic and cultural influences that push these. And I don't think it's anything to be really afraid of. I think it's just
No,
if you're aware of it and you know where you want to end up by the end of it, I think you can place yourself fairly well.
I think as long as you understand, and I think this is what's important to me, is you lose sight of not only what's important but what's real. And if you look back, and the one thing with the fourth turning, um, it goes back and cites historical evidence of these turnings. And you can go back to, at the end of the Civil War, and people were talking about the exact same thing. Terrorism, and there's aspects of genocide and war. Friends on friend war, and the world is ending, and these events cause reactions that humans react to, and we all always react in the same way. And there's all the different personality types that get involved. And then it's about what your lived experience is. The longer you get away from wars, the people that are in power don't have those memories. I mean, one of the things that resulted from World War II is the prolonged peace, because the people that came back from World War II were then in the elected to government and were in positions of power and control as they aged, and their experience of war taught them they don't want to be there again. But the further you get away from that, and the next generation comes up, and they're just repeating the history, because we as humans just react to this different stimuluses the same way, based on where we live, where our personality types, what our life experiences are, and what the generational cohorts go through. It's a fascinating topic, and it's definitely something. I posted it on Twitter. Probably, I guess it was probably after the 2020 election, when they were talking about the election fraud and whatnot. And I just, the whole thing that was going on there, and the rise of fascism and stuff like that. And obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and all these things just really brought me to that book. And when you map out where the book is in the turnings, we are at the end of the fourth turning, which is where the systems kind of get destroyed, and then the next is the enlightenment, and building, and community building comes back. And I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic about that. Unfortunately, there'll be a few dark days ahead, but I think focusing on what we're doing in our community is the most important. And I think in particular, protecting people's mental health right now, and just letting them know that this is not going to define us in our community. And obviously, being there to support the ones that are going through the most traumatic stuff is important. But I think there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train.
Thank goodness. I was
Yes.
thinking this morning about this topic a bit, and thinking to myself that people who are really scared, who really believe that this is like the worst that's ever been, and we're not getting out of it. And there are people who thoroughly believe that, or they say that they believe it 100%. And I was thinking about that. Not that I'm not, well, I am questioning their 100% belief system in it. Because if you did believe that, what would be your motivation for continuing on?
Yeah.
Right. So I was thinking about that today, and I don't think anyone really believes 100% that this is the end of things. I think that's the talk and the buzz, but I don't think anyone really believes it. Otherwise, there would be, I don't know, I hate saying it, there'd be mass suicides, and people just wouldn't go to work, people wouldn't care. And I mean, I still see people filling the streets, filling the buses, going to work, doing their thing. I'm making plans for next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. I mean, I
Me too.
right. I mean, if we thought that this was the worst it could ever be, why would we even bother making plans for tomorrow? But
Well,
we
and
do.
I think
Right?
that's part of human nature, and I think it goes to you know what the best part of humans are is just eternal optimism. There, and obviously there's people that are not as optimistic as others, but I think in the end of the day, this is what keeps us surviving, is just adapting. And I mean, humans are incredibly adaptive. We're highly intelligent. I read another book that was based on the convergence of technologies, and how the reason why we're moving so rapidly right now is that technologies in one sector are being used in other sectors to advance. So as soon as we make discoveries in certain areas, that quickly propels a whole bunch of other areas to use that same technology. Um, so the idea of climate change being a cataclysmic end of human existence, I think is not supported by the evidence, but it's also very highly unlikely that over the next 10, 15, 20 years we will not solve that. And whether it's with green energy or whether it's with innovation in carbon capture, whether it's just some practical stuff like let's just get energy independent, let's relook at nuclear. We've already got some answers that are solved there. So when you talk about these war events, they're really just disruptive events in a period that people look to as evidence of the end of times. But
Mhm.
going through history, these events have come up and the same reactions. If you look at newspaper articles, people were fretting and talking about the exact same thing. And why wouldn't they? We view the history as just these people that live back there that don't really understand what we're going through. Well, guess what? They do because they've gone through all the same things and some of them worse.
Right.
So, and that's what, propels people's thinking and ideas of it. But you forget history. That, we've solved crises over
Well,
time and wars
and
pass. And
you do, and I've been thinking about that lots, Calen. I've been thinking, at first when the Ukrainian issue exploded in our faces, I was nervous, I was scared, I was like, oh my god, I was fearful of nuclear war was the first thing on everyone's mind, and I'm thinking to myself, we've been through this before. Like our age group, we grew up in the Cold War. That
yeah,
was kind of, if it wasn't World War II or Vietnam, that was as bad as it got. Like we
yeah,
thought there was
yeah.
always
Well,
potential
yeah,
for
you had the
stuff
threat
to
of it,
cover,
right?
right?
Yeah,
And I don't know about you, but I kind of forgotten about how that made me feel the anxiety, the that overhanging threat of what could happen was always there as a child. And I guess we kind of grew up with that, so we don't remember really until we're actually faced with a real life reminder about what that looks like. And we've been through this. We're going to be great. We're going to be fine.
no, 100%. And I think that is what is usually lost in the details is that, and of course, depending on what, information you're drawing your sources on, you know, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of stuff that isn't supported by data. Um, and even it's all relative. Like if you look at even crime rates and deaths by guns, and especially in Canada, U.S. is like crazy off the charts, but um, it's really we're at the least amount of criminal activity we've had in the history of the recording of it. It's up from where it was 2 or 3 years ago or 4 years ago, but it's still like
Look here.
incredibly down. I can't see it. You got to move it over.
Oh,
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
yeah.
Enlightenment Now. This is
Enlightenment
it.
now, right? This is
I,
a
I
book.
read that book 2 years ago. It's amazing.
It is
And
amazing,
that's another book that made me calm down about stuff.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
it's a
It's
good
really
read,
good.
that one. It
Yeah.
made me feel calmer when I read it, and that
Totally.
was a couple of years ago as well. But
Yeah.
as an industry, and now that we've been through pestilence and we've been through war and we've been through economic downturns and we've been through closures. I think that this next year, my focus in the hospitality industry, this last year we've been taking care of our people. I think
Hmm.
and that's been really really important. And I don't want to stop doing that. That will just continue. I've got a
Yeah.
really basis for that. I want to bring more people on board with that idea of just taking care of your people, both mentally, physically, and economically. But next year I want to work on in the environmental issues. I think
Hmm.
that is where, as an industry, I think that's really where our focus to go. And that's where my attention's probably going to end up mostly.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. And I know, the restaurant industry in particular is one of the higher carbon emitting industries. The average restaurant emits or did emit, it's less now because of just, the government is catching up. And people now are recycling and they're composting and things like that. But 400 tons of carbon emits from the average restaurant. And this is data probably 10 years old now. Um, when we opened Big Wheel Burger, we did it with the idea of becoming carbon neutral, which we did after I think 2 years. But it's one of these things about feeling the fear and doing it anyways. We didn't, we weren't naive to the restaurant industry because we'd had Zambries for a couple or 10, 11 years at that point. But just the unknown of what it takes to do, and then how easy it is once you get there. And I think it's probably the easiest thing that we can do as community minded businesses, to try to help others become carbon neutral and just make common sense changes that can really make a difference. And it's not about banning straws or plastic bags. It's really about vetting your compost sources and buying materials that can better impact the environment, like the takeout packaging. So, I mean, if you look at the a plastic straw versus the actual containers that the food goes in and the wrapping and all of that stuff, like simply buying a paper wrap versus buying something that's lined with something that can't be composted. Um, and now, because of the demand for these types of products, the suppliers are catching up. So you've got a wide variety of resources to buy compostable containers and PLA and things like that actually can break down. Um, and that was one of the things that the bread and butter collective, in discussions, we all went to the Fisher Road compost facility on the island here, and basically just vetted whether or not the stuff that we're actually composting gets composted. And I was so happy to find out that it was.
And
Um,
so surprised at what they were composting. The knowledge
yeah,
that came from that one trip was so good that I've been thinking about that too. We need to go back and bring other people, because that was truly an amazing trip. Even though it was just a compost place, it was such an eye opener.
well, and I think the part of the thing, I think it illustrates the example of what's out there in the universe and the media on what's actually happening. I know, I think it was about 3 years ago, or a year or two before the pandemic started. There was an article, I think on the National, that talked about us shipping like plastic and stuff to Indonesia
Mm.
and Asian countries that just get dumped and they burn it basically.
Well, they
And
burned
that
it. Now they're
really,
not taking it anymore, so it's just
no,
going from
exactly.
harbor to
But my
harbor.
point, yeah, the point about that for me was that it just was, wait a minute, like here I'm thinking we're doing all this stuff, but what is actually happening? And then obviously, when that news story broke, things changed and those countries stopped taking it. But it shows you a bit of the hypocrisy around everything else that we do. And when somebody mentioned about our composting and whether it doesn't actually get composted, it just goes to the garbage dump. I was just like, well, no, it doesn't. But let's find out. So I guess this is, the message for me is like, look, if you're unsure, go to the source, find out, do your own investigation, do your own direct research, which we did, and would basically confirmed what I was hoping. But I mean, hope is not a plan. So
No.
actually get the information verified, which we did, and now we can move forward with a composting program and encourage others to do the same thing, knowing that it is verified and vetted. And yeah, I mean, it's an important component to the whole thing. It's just making sure that you actually do your own research and find out what is actually happening
Right.
versus
No,
what you're being told.
Calen, you've been a big mover and shaker in the carbon neutral industry, right? In the
Yeah.
hospitality industry here in Victoria, and I don't know how many people really know that, but I want to take time to say thank you because you've really inspired me to do it for next year. So my goal for next year is to be carbon neutral, just like Calen McNeil is.
I love it.
However,
I love it.
in order to get there, I do need your help and your advice and your direction. So I mean, not on air. We won't talk about that too much, but I am going to be I'm going to be taking what the bread and butter was made for, which is for mentorship and direction. And I'm going to be using
Totally.
that, and I'm going to be asking you to help me do this. And I'm going to
100%.
try to probably record some of how that works, just like the steps of how to. And then maybe for our third season of this podcast, we can spend a podcast going through the steps of how an average hospitality industry place can go from not having an idea of what carbon neutral is to actually being carbon neutral and helping others get there as well.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of information out there. There's organizations that, um, the name's escaping me right now, but I think it's Green Vancouver Island or Vancouver Island Green.
Yeah, the
Um,
Vancouver Island Green Association is
yeah, but it's a certification for
synergy.
greening businesses. So
Isn't
there,
that
there's
Jill Doucette?
yeah, Jill's involved with it,
Okay.
but it is more Jill does owns a company called Synergy. And for people that don't know, they should look up Jill Doucette and Synergy. Synergy is basically started as a consulting company to help businesses go green. They've kind of expanded their scope now, but she was very instrumental in creating a framework to so that businesses can get to carbon neutral and then defining what that means. And then the certification program that was adopted has different, bronze, gold, and or gold, silver, and bronze categories of greening. So I think, immediately you can do stuff, and there's probably stuff that you're doing already that, you're not far off. I
Yeah,
can assure you, the only thing you're not doing is offsetting your carbon
right.
emissions that you are. And there's other things, just tracking where your emissions are at and all of those things, and which are all valuable to try to get to the carbon neutrality. But it is so incredibly easy to do. It's a lot of administration, and unfortunately, in this world, verification and all those things are important. So it is kind of like a little painful, just to go through, all your hydro and your gas and all those bills, and just seeing where you were and where you are, and like how much you're actually using, and then how many of your employees bike versus drive, and it's all those different levels, right?
Right. And it's all that kind of information that you can't really manage if you don't measure it, right? If I just look at my hydro bill, I'm not looking at the kilowatts per hour I use. I'm looking at how much my hydro bill costs.
Yeah, how much is
And
it? And even
that
then, it's disconnected with the environment because
right.
prices go up based on other factors that have nothing to do with the environment.
Exactly.
Um,
So I really look forward to going through the process and really understanding what my hydro bill really means to me and the environment, and that plus everything else. I look very much forward to it. I think my companies go through the synergy program, and we're green or gold, depending on the location
yeah,
we're at. So I honestly don't think we have a lot further to go before we're all green. But that's that carbon neutrality. So that's part of the same accreditation, or is that a different accreditation? Just
no, it's the
well,
same. In order to do it, like the carbon offset is what you do with the carbon emissions you do produce. So, we divert 99.5% of all waste from our operations. But,
wow,
we do produce, a small amount of garbage. But the
ninety
most,
nine point 5%. Sorry, did you say?
yeah,
That's
diverted
amazing.
from the landfill. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a diversion rate. So when it comes to the actual emissions we produce, like I think we're at around 40. I mean, we're at 400. So we've reduced it by 90% of our emissions. So we have to offset 10% of the emissions. So if we're at 400, we've got to offset 400 tons, we got to offset 40. And to do that, there's a group. They keep changing their name because the mission changes and grows. So it used to be called offsetters, and we basically pay offsetters to offset. So we pick from a pool of offsetting. So whether you plant trees or invest in projects that do either remove carbon or add plants and greenery to take carbon out of the air. So that's how you offset it. So I think we're spending around $200 or $300 a month to offset our emissions. So basically, we're offsetting our emissions by taking emissions away in a different area. So there's a number of organizations that do it. The one that we work with, I think they're based out of Vancouver, but I can send you all that information. But once you figure out what your emissions that you need to offset are, which is what Synergy does, so the certification point of it, and then there's also the offsetting part of it, which allows you to be carbon neutral. But it's very relatively inexpensive, and we have 5 stores, and I think our total offset is around $300 a month.
That's amazing, and it seems so possible. I mean, from what we've been through in the last couple of years, where it doesn't feel like we can do anything except move ahead and be positive. This feels like we can take some tangible actions and really help. It feels like a real positive thing to do in the next year. I'm really looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
I mean, I think it's something that it's a bit more than just recycling at home and composting at home. The scale, if you can get, I mean, if you did, I mean, I don't even know how many hundreds and thousands of restaurants are on Vancouver Island, but if even 25 or 30% of them were carbon neutral, you'd be saving immense amount of emissions going into the atmosphere. And I think that's one of the areas the government has really fallen down on is they're talking about landlocking oil while we're still exporting as much coal as, I mean, it might be down a bit, but we're still exporting as much coal as, for the most part, as we have to China and Asia and India and places like this, while we're defunding oil and gas, which is an economic issue, but it's also like, okay, well, what can we all do to help support our own country in bringing our emissions down, where we're not just looking at attacking big oil, or looking at attacking other people that really it's so complicated and complex. When let's just make it simple. Like, what are your business doing? Okay, you be carbon neutral. Okay, at home, recycle, compost, ride an electric bike. The idea of everybody going and buying a electric vehicle, in my mind, is an environmental catastrophe waiting to happen. For one, you won't have enough supply. For two, there is a lot of environmental impact in the short term with over and above a combustible engine vehicle, like the amount of emissions, on the outset. Over time, those emissions go down. I think it's break even at 3 to 4 years with an electric vehicle versus the combustible, and then it starts going down over time. But funny enough, the average person only owns their vehicle for 5 years. So I mean, it's going to take time to decarbonize that item, but I think it just speaks to the fact that you'd be paralyzed if you thought that you couldn't do something. So again, the message in this sort of podcast is just bring it home and do what you can do in your own backyard, without worrying about things that you cannot control. And hopefully, just like when we first started in 2011 with Big Wheel being green, the government and mandating composting and things like that wasn't around, but now here we find ourselves, it is. So over time things do get better and we get smarter, and there's hope. But in the meantime, just do what we can do in our backyard.
And by being proactive, you're also getting ahead of the curve. So when things are mandated, like you have to compost or you have to be carbon neutral, it's not going to come as a surprise or a big expense to you because you've already built that into your business. Um,
Exactly. And when you talk about a climate emergency, why the heck aren't we talking about sort of individual action? I wrote a blog on our website about it, and it just speaks to the fact that we are in control of our world, but our world is literally, the block of the street we live on, the people that we work with, if we're, in our industries, we're employers. So, mentoring and being good role models for other people to green and be sensitive to that. And then just let all the other chips fall where they may. But I think, the federal and provincial governments can do a lot by just saying, hey, businesses, why don't you guys become green? And here's how you do it. And here's a certification and just, hopefully spreading it out. So for my part, I'm happy to give you every single bit of information we have and my time and all of that stuff, because I think this is how we make change. And I think one of the beauties of our collective is that we've all committed to sharing as much information as we have with each other. And it's in the spirit of supporting each other, but also preventing everybody from making the same mistakes that others have made in the past, which again produces more productivity, makes us more profitable, allows us to pay living wages to our staff, and we just build a better community. So this is just the exact same example of the importance of doing that and sharing information without worrying about the competition or what have you. I had a very interesting. This is a bit of a segue, but had a very interesting conversation with Chris Jones from Jones Barbecue about we have a foundation, we raise money, and we match the donations that we raise at Big Wheel, and he's wanting to do the same thing. So for me, I'm prepared to give him every bit of information to help him do that. And I think if this a success, obviously I think Big Wheel Burger is successful and Zambers is successful, but that I feel way more pride with, that I've maybe inspired somebody else to do good works and build on the business model that we've done. And the next step would be the environment. So whether it be the community support or the environmental support, it's like those projects are way more important to building a strong community and actually making real change that impacts and helps people versus just puts money in our pockets or provides food for people or drink for people. I think having a bigger mission is very important, and that's where the spice of life is making impactful change, but just stuff that you can actually control. I'm not trying to become McDonald's, but I think if I was a McDonald's, I would have liked them to start the way I'm starting. And what kind of a difference would the world be if other businesses just take a small percentage of their profit or revenue and just give it back, not waiting till they're a billionaire and saying, okay, I'm going to give you 25 billion.
it's too
How
late
about
now.
just doing it?
Then,
Yeah,
if
it's
you're
kind of
greedy by
it's
then,
too
you
totally
don't get to be
well.
a
And
billionaire by not being greedy a bit.
no, and well, and stepping on other people, and
Mm.
a lot of the money you're taking from others, right? So there's a finite. Well, we're proving there isn't a finite amount of money in the world, but there is a finite dollar value or amount of money in the world. Um, so it spreads around. So if somebody's getting it, another person's losing it. Um, and I don't think inherently, I think that is a part of how life works. But I do think that if you started, I think McDonald's started in the 50s. So if you're looking at making impactful change, and they've done great things, like I'm not saying they don't, but if you look at actually the percentage that they give away versus what they earn or revenue wise, it's very small. And just upping that, just doubling that or tripling that would make zero impact to how they run their business, but could make incredible impact to the communities that they're in. And so start that in 1955 or 57 or 58 or 60 or 70 or 80 or 90. Okay, we're in 2022. Like, how
But how
much
much that would
more Yeah. So
So
from this
great.
example, if we can, as a community here on Vancouver Island, create, 15 businesses that are carbon neutral, 25, 100, 200, 300 businesses, 10 years from now, we've also inspired a whole group of other people to do the same thing. And it is really truly a gift that keeps giving, and the rewards are realized at some point in the future. But start now, and one of the ways you do that is by sharing information and sharing both the troubles and the successes of why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and preventing the road, preventing things from failing, and yeah, so inspiring other people to do things is, I think, super important. And there's no time like the present to try to do things
Well,
positive.
and yeah, and we're in a position as business owners that we're very busy. I mean, we've got our own things going on, so it's not really practical for us to be able to do everything that we want to be able to do. However, in helping other people get to where they want to be by inspiring, by coaching, by leading, by mentoring, however you want to put it, that that gives gives us a greater sense of purpose by putting out the information that people need to succeed and to get to where they want to be. It may be that we can't be in all the places we want to be in the future, but we can help other people get there. An example was I'm really interested in this one topic that has nothing to do with the hospitality industry, and I don't have time to devote myself to get there. But I've got a friend who that's his passion, what he wanted to do, but he couldn't do it. So I helped him get there just by
Mm,
coaching him through some steps and how to get his ideas from his head to paper to actuality. And he had an event that was so successful that he put on because of the pushes and the help that I was giving him. And to me, like, I didn't have to do that. Like, I didn't
hmm.
have to do the event. He did it, and it was so
Yeah.
successful, and he felt so good, and that made me feel so accomplished, way more accomplished than if I had put on the event, which I didn't have time to do anyway. So we can,
Totally.
and so by helping other people get to where they want to be, we can be in more places than we could ever expect to be. I don't know if that came out all
No,
goofy.
oh no, it's 100% exactly, the important thing. And I get asked quite often, about why I, give, and I'd say this, I'm trying not to blow smoke up my own butt, but where I give so much of time and information to people. And it's just something I've always done. And I think if you look at the actual cost of time, and time is an investment just like physical money is, um, and then what do you want to do spending your time and where you get your reward, but also what you're trying to build. So if you give, you get. And a lot of people need to see that tangibly, like, okay, I give you this, so what am I getting back now? It's not about that for me. And I think the key to making these types of organizations work and cooperations work is just have zero expectations of what you're getting back, but just understand that you will get something back in the future, which is, I think, the key to making this all work.
I Yeah.
And for me, I've always gotten things back, and I get phone calls and I get opportunities, and that I would have never have gotten if I wasn't just free with giving information and helping.
It kind of feels really I don't know that very much a people issue. I mean, people want to give and they feel better giving, and yeah, I've always been really free with my information and my skill set
100%.
for forever. And I look at other coffee shops in Victoria, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know where this person came from. That person worked for me, or I trained that person.
Yeah.
or I help this person with their costing, or they help me with my costing, and it just feels like that. Like, well, that's how to build something bigger than one can build on their own, and
100%.
that's what I love a lot about the Bread and Butter Collective is that it gives us an opportunity to build something way bigger together than we could
Mhm.
build on our own.
Well, and I think there's a lot of, I mean, we just had our quarterly meeting on Monday, I guess it was, and John Reese from Table Nine Consulting,
Table Nine, one of
um,
our proud
yeah,
sponsors.
walked us through a the EOS platform from Traction, the book Traction, which is another excellent resource. And because part of the thing is like you need to, in order to do some of these ideas and also have time, you have to be organized and having a good corporate business structure to actually move your business forward, which is the premise of Traction, is important. And I just want to share quickly one of the sort of the wheels of this thing. I'll just show. This is kind of
Yeah,
the
the EOS wheel.
EOS wheel, which is basically vision and sharing your vision and having a vision that's shared by everybody in your organization, so everybody knows where you're going. It's based on data, so make sure you have data that's measurable. Um, the processes, having the proper processes, documented, followed by all. The SOP, we call them in our organization, and others, standard operating procedures. You've got people, the right people in the right seats. You could have great people that just are in the wrong job, wrong seat. So, trying to position those people so that they can be maximum success for your organization, but also for them as individuals. And then issues, making sure that you're not just spending a bunch of time, talking about problems. You're actually moving problems forward and solving them. And then, the traction component of it is just having structured meetings and then having somebody own the task, and we call them rocks. And I think, that if you have an organization, get the book Traction. It is a very inexpensive way to greatly improve your organizational structure and flow, and also move your business forward. So you're actually dealing with solutions, not just constantly talking about problems. Problem talking chews up an immense amount of time and doesn't really produce any results
Yeah,
unless you
it,
move it to the
it's like
decision and solution.
politicking. It's like politicking, right? You say
Yes.
the same thing more than once in a conversation. You're politicking. Um, EOS is one of my favorite topics, and
Yeah, I
again,
know your organization's done great work with it, and you've used it long before I even was aware of it. So,
it is.
yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, well, I think that we would do it in injustice by just briefly touching on it. I think it requires an
Hmm.
entire podcast. But
Which we'll be doing in
EOS,
season 3.
that's right. And this is like the kind of the ending of our season 2, isn't it?
Yes, it's our recap show and also a look forward to what we hope to do. And I think this season, obviously, it was our second season. I think we did 13 episodes in the first one. We're gonna have done 12 this season, and we focus a lot on origin stories. We talked about Brasserie Lacole, Mark Morrison's origin story of that organization. We talked about your origin story, my origin story. We had a good conversation with Jason from Sheringham Distillery. Talked about that industry, which I thought was fantastic. And we talked a little bit about gambling, which was interesting.
Game theory.
Um, Game theory. And what I liked about our first season is that we had some really good practical business advice and information and liaising. And for season 3, I'd like to get back to that for that season, and talk about the environment and bring on people that can actually move it forward and give best practices of that. I'd like to dedicate, like you mentioned, a show to the EOS, and perhaps have John Reese on from Table Nine Consulting, who's a great. He went through the EOS, and many of us at that meeting had know about it and use it in our day to day businesses. But he just has a very good way of explaining it, and I think he'd be a great guy to have on the show. Obviously, bringing on Jill Dissett from Synergy, and I kind of actually want to bring on Lisa Helps, the mayor,
Yeah.
and talk a little bit about the municipal government issues, how they relate to business, but also how they relate to the environment, and just kind of moving things forward. She is not running for re-election in November. She's obviously a controversial. There's been some controversy amongst our city in here with her and with the council and all that kind of stuff. But I know her personally, and hope I can maybe get her on the show. And just she's very smart and very in tune with a lot of issues that relate to our industry, and also talking about the green initiative that the Bread and Butter Collective did with our recyclable container program, which I think is fantastic, and the city of Victoria is getting behind that.
Yeah,
And
and great opportunity to talk about how to expand that as well.
totally. And I'm having a meeting next week in Nanaimo with the chamber and the hospitality association up there. They're interested in creating a bread and butter collective in Nanaimo, which I think is, listen, this is the spirit of what we're trying to do here, is spread
It
the good
is.
word. And I always wanted to be a preacher, actually, like
You'd be.
long time ago.
I'm gonna buy you a pulpit for your birthday.
Yes, so let's preach. I'm not really religious, so let's preach the good work of moving business forward, and just how we can really help each other.
I want you to
Especially,
preach the triple bottom line to me. Preach it all day long.
triple bottom line is the way to go. And we've done everything but become a B Corp, because B Corp is another interesting model. And it was originally started, I believe, I'm going to get this, I'm just going to butcher it, but these two friends or brothers started a company, and they made it a triple bottom line company before triple bottom line was a thing. And when they sold their company, they actually created a B Corp model. So basically, what a B Corp model is you basically are committing your business to being a triple bottom line company for the entirety of its operation. You actually encode it in the constitution of the corporation. And when the business sells, that business is a B Corp forever. And so basically, there's no worry about somebody coming over and buying it and taking away the fundamentals of becoming a B Corp, which is basically the triple bottom line is the environment, the community, your staff, and also you making a profit. But yeah, that's maybe one day Big will become a B Corp, but I think that's an interesting topic too that we can maybe touch on as it relates to the environment and what businesses can do to better not only the environment, but their staff and the workers' life,
Yeah.
and then also the community too.
Right. I think that I think you're absolutely right. Our first season was very factual. Our second season has been very taking care of people. It felt like a
Yeah,
people season, and I'm with you. I want to get back to some factual helping topics for the third season. Not that people are not interesting. People are my favorite humans. How do you say that?
they're my favorite humans too.
Yeah, people are my favorite humans, and there wouldn't be a very good world without them. But I think that we do. I think there's really great opportunity, and there's such great projects coming up for the Bread and Butter Collective as we go into our next quarter. We're gonna have lots of issues that are gonna come up that are gonna naturally lead themselves into podcast topics. So our 5 listeners out there will be able to keep up with all of what the Bread and Butter Collective is currently doing in our next season, I guess.
Yes. Well, and we can work on some promotion and things like that as well
And
too.
get more
But
than five?
No,
No, I think we have more than
yeah,
five
I
listeners.
think we
I
have
know
more than
we.
five, but it's the point of it is when you spread the good word, it takes a little while to catch on. It's like a little amber in the woods, then becomes a raging forest fire. Ooh, that's again environmental topic,
Yeah,
but
it's a good
much
thing
like
you got those atmospheric rivers coming through. They'll put the fire out. Is that how that
well,
works?
I don't.
I
Well,
don't know.
hopefully, with the heat dome starts the fire, and the atmospheric river
River puts it.
puts it out.
Oh man.
Well, that's awesome. You know what, Sam? I've enjoyed this season. I enjoy your friendship. I enjoy your collaboration. And here's to a positive 2022, even though it seems like it's almost impossible to think of that right now. But I'm pretty optimistic. And, if we just keep focusing on our own world and our own municipality and with our own partnerships and friendships and collaborations, I think we're going to be in a lot better place. So let's just focus on that and not let the noise of the world kind of crumble us.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I really respect what you do, how you do it, and I'm really honored to be part of this podcast with you and part of the Bread and Butter Collective as a whole. And I am very positive about what it's going to bring and how we're going to change our environment and how we're going to change our communities and how we're just going to make them better by being our natural selves.
How easy is that?
Right?
It's just the easiest thing we can do. We don't have to change anything. We don't have to do anything different. We still put on our clothes the same way, and we still, enter, our vehicles and drive to our work or bike to our work or however we get there. And yeah, it's so easy to do. Just got to keep doing what we're doing.
Yes, be ourselves, be nice to everyone, and yeah,
Yeah,
and
be kind.
yeah, right. Your tagline: "Be kind." Mine's "Be
Be
nice,"
kind.
and together we're leading our industry in a positive way.
Yeah, 100%. And nobody can say different, right?
No, and if they do,
Not yet, anyways. Yeah, yeah. Well, and the other
the
thing too,
bird.
I want to give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to Kyle Lancaster, who is our producer, our key person, as they say, and also check podcasts and check TV in general. They've been a very good partner in our podcasts, and they host us, and yeah, it's been really rewarding. And check in general. Is a community station, which I think is so important in this day and age of, media warfare, that supporting local is key.
It's true.
And we
They're
definitely
employee
do.
owned.
They're employee owned,
Yeah.
and you do not want to see local news and local journalism go away. And this is one way to help do that is supporting the Czech podcast and other endeavors that Czech does. So I'm a huge fan of Czech.
Yeah. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks for always being behind
Thanks,
the
Kyle.
desk.
All right, and we look forward to talking to everybody in season 3, which we're not sure when we're starting season 3, but it'll be in the next few months for sure. And yeah, thank you for the support, and be kind to each other.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Be real nice and do good things out there in the world.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, 900 Degrees Wood-Fired Pizzeria, Agrius, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Brentwood Bay Village Emporium, Nourish and Charlotte the Quail, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Hoyne Brewing, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Rain Dogs, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, Taco Stand Al Pastor, Toque, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, and Zambres.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.